My name is Lana Neal. I am the Leadership Development Pastor here at Forest Park, and one of the things I get the opportunity to do is really encourage people to take this journey of global outreach. And so as we're kind of talking through this today, the first thing I want to talk about is waking up in the morning. Okay? How many of you would say that you are a morning person and waking up for you is easy? Okay, good. There are those of us, other of us, that we really need that alarm clock in order to wake up. And so my kids have always needed alarm clocks. I need a little bit of alarm clock, but there are all kinds of things that we need in our lives in order to wake up in the morning. Now, if you've been setting digital alarm clocks for a long time, this may be one of the first sounds that you're used to hearing to get you awake and moving in the morning. Okay, just the sound of that annoys you, doesn't it? I mean, just to hear it, it's like it's post-traumatic stress. Just to think I had to hear that this morning. Okay, then we moved into the world of digital, smartphones and all the alarms. How many of you set your alarm on your phone? Okay, most everybody. All right, you might hear something like this. So it's still an annoying alarm, but it's just a different annoying alarm. Okay, or you might hear something like this. Anybody hear that in the morning? Okay, and if you live at my house, this might be what you hear cranking up off of my phone at 5 a.m. I mean, how better to get yourself up and moving at 5 a.m.? And now that we've got the baby living in our house, he is going to be ready for Queen by the time he is, whatever. So that's the way you wake up at our house. So all of those things, that's just to give you an idea that it takes us time to wake up. It takes us time to get going. We need something that will wake us up and get us moving. My kids always, I would set my alarm when they were teenagers. I'd set it 30 minutes before I needed to leave, just for the aspect to build in time to wake up teenagers, because it takes a little bit longer. Now that they've got their smartphones and all of their stuff, they eventually, got it. But it's like they intentionally slept through their alarms. I mean, have you seen that happen? It's like they would set them, but then intentionally sleep through them and still wait for me to wake them up. I mean, it was just all just very odd. And so sometimes we do the same thing spiritually, that we are asleep, spiritually asleep, until something wakes us up. We are sleeping through our lives. And one of the things that causes us to sleep through our lives is busyness. In the American culture, we feel 5 a.m. through midnight nearly every day. I teach classes on time management, and one of the things is that assign that hour something to do. Don't let any hour go by without having something to do. And but it has caused us to lull ourselves into a sleep. And then you add in things such as loss, pain, sickness, and then you're not only just sleepwalking, you're numb. You're numb to everything. And so you are asleep spiritually, walking through life and numb. And so the premise of that is that you are alive, but life is not flowing through you. So you are awake, you're moving, you're going through the motions, but you are alive, but life is not flowing through you. And so I want to say to all of you who are thinking and contemplating, and maybe, I'll call you the outliers, maybe not just in the perimeter of the building, but maybe in your mind, and you're thinking, there is no way that I would ever leave this country to go do anything. I am saying to you loud and clear, if you need to wake your spirit, if you are going through the life just like that, you're alive, but life is not flowing through you, there is nothing that will wake you better than that type of experience for you to come alive than global outreach. Being a part of something that has absolutely nothing to do with you. So, how many of you have seen the movie The Greatest Showman? It was released in January of last year. You will remember that we did a door with that theme. You walked into the building and it had the great big tent, that you'll remember last April. We just loved it. And we picked up from that entire movie, the whole theme of that was that you can walk in authenticity. This is me. This is who I am. But the very first song that I ever heard from that soundtrack was the song Come Alive. And I loved it so much because the premise of the movie was to give people who felt as if they were misfits, that they weren't attractive physically, that there was something that was really odd about them. It gave them a place to call home. It gave them community. So I want you to watch this clip from the song Come Alive and how beautifully it captures what I'm trying to communicate today.
Come alive, come alive. Go and light your light, let it burn so bright, reaching up to the sky, and it's open wide, you're electrified. The world becomes a fantasy, and you're more than you could ever be, 'cause you're dreaming with your eyes wide open. Whoa. And you know you can't go back again to the world that you were living in, 'cause you're dreaming with your eyes wide open. So come alive. Ready. They're waiting.
For what?
For you. They don't know it yet, but they are gonna love you. Trust me. Tom! Up! I see it in your eyes. You believe that lie, that you need to hide your face. Afraid to step outside, so you lock the door. But don't you stay that way.
No more living in no shadows. You and me, we know how that goes.
'Cause once you see it, oh, you'll never be the same.
You'll feel like it's shining. Bottle up to keep on shining.
You can do it, there's more to you. You cannot be afraid. Come alive, come alive. Go and light your light, let it burn so bright. Reach it up to the sky, and it's open wide. You're electrified, and the world becomes a fantasy, and you're more than you could ever be, 'cause you're dreaming with your eyes wide open. And we know we can't go back again to the world that we were living in, 'cause we're dreaming with our eyes wide open. So come alive.
Okay, so the lyric that I love most from that is, the world becomes a fantasy and you're more than you could ever be because you're dreaming with your eyes wide open. And we know we can't go back again to the world where we were living in because we're dreaming with our eyes wide open. Come alive. That's what happens when you allow yourself to go on a global outreach experience. You start dreaming with your eyes wide open. And I want you to be a part of that. I love talking to people who are new in their faith. I love it, the excitement, the energy that they have. But the thing that I always think is so unique about people when they first come to faith is that they have a unique spiritual awareness. And what I mean by that is that they're open. They're just like that said, they're dreaming with their eyes wide open. They've awakened to the fact that there's something more to this world than just what they see. There's something more to life than what I see, I taste, I feel, than right there, or than what is right there. And so they are dreaming with their eyes wide open because they're coming alive to everything around them. And then as things go, life goes, life starts happening, life starts living me rather than me living life. They have a tendency to get into the same habits. They get comfortable, spiritually numb, and slip back into the same old ways. Doesn't mean that they are not a follower of Jesus. It just means that they're slowly but quickly being lulled asleep. The day by day survival of the grind. And so at that point, we become spiritual sleepwalkers. Spiritual sleepwalkers. I think spiritual sleepwalking is the condition that the Apostle Paul was dealing with the church at Ephesus when he said this. Okay, so this is found in Ephesians 5:14, and I'm using the contemporary English version if you want to follow along. Light shows up everything, just as the scriptures say. Wake up from your sleep and rise from your death. then Christ will shine on you. Bible commentary tells us about this particular verse, that when Paul is talking to the church at Ephesus, is that it probably was words to a song. And so he's kind of reiterating that, kind of like how we do, kind of like how I just did. And so in his letter back to the people there at Ephesus, he's kind of reiterating this song. He's talking to people, and that's the thing I want you to understand. He's talking to people who are following Jesus. It's not like that these are people who don't know him. And he can already, this is the first church. I mean, a lot of these people saw Jesus with their own eyes, and they are already getting to a place that he feels like he needs to say, wake up. Not just wake up, but I mean, you're acting like you're dead people. Wake up, come alive. And so you might feel like today that you're kind of like that. You're walking through life almost in a stupor. Things could have happened that made you feel so discouraged and so disillusioned. And you're going to work, you're coming home, you're sitting at the table with your kids, you're looking at your spouse, but you are so numb that you feel disconnection from everything. And I want to give you the opportunity today to wake up, just like that verse says. And so again, I'm not saying that you're not a follower of Jesus or that you're a bad person. The thing is that you've just allowed yourself to fall into a state that your life is living you rather than you living your life. That happens to us when we're disappointed. That happens to us when we're disillusioned. That happens to us when we experience great loss, great pain, great discouragement. And so it isn't that there's something wrong with you. It's the fact that life is living you. You're not living your life. And so January brings a time, always, every year, of those New Year's resolutions. And so I'm curious, today is day 27. How many of you have kept every one of those promises? No, let's not say that. How many of you have kept one promise that you made to yourself? Okay, I'm seeing the hands. All right, that's great. Kept one promise. The truth is that those things are hard to do, but I want you to make promises to yourself, whatever they are. They're deeply personal. You can start on February 1. You can start on January 27th. But the only way to just really honor yourself is to keep those promises to yourself. Because what happens is when you keep those promises to yourself, this is what I have found, you minimize today's regret by maximizing tomorrow's faithfulness. So if you will keep those promises to yourself, you are minimizing tomorrow's regret with today's faithfulness. You're keeping that promise to yourself. And so we want to give you the opportunity to make a promise to yourself. Just open your mind to it. Now, some of you are sitting there and say, there is no way I'm ever getting on a plane. She just needs to hush. I just need to go home. And there are some of you that are kind of interested and you're starting to wake up. You're like, I might think about it. Just hang with me as we want to give you the opportunity to wake you up something. Again, like I said, there's nothing that will wake you up more or you come alive more than jumping on an airplane with your friends and who are all focused on the same purpose, headed to the same place, someplace you've never been before, to share how global outreach, to do something with one another just on that mission trip, whatever the goal is. And so I asked some of our team members, now we do a big Ecuador recap when we get back from Ecuador, and then we had a trip to Rwanda in October and then Uganda in November. So I've asked some of those team members to kind of tell me, why is it that you think someone should go on that trip? And so this first one, I asked Jan Fleury. And so there's a picture of Jan from when she was in Uganda, and she went with us, and this is what she had to say about her experience. Going to Uganda opened my eyes and my heart. The experience forced me to expand my thinking and my worldview. My time there, away from the habits of the daily grind, gave me opportunities to reflect on my life, my God, and my purpose. Now, she had no idea what I was going to be talking about in my message, but it totally aligned with exactly what I was saying. And so she's a person that's been following Jesus for a long time. She, has buy-in to Forest Park. She has buy-in to, she serves on our staff. She's raised her kids in church, but still that experience, she said, it allowed her to get away and focus on opportunities to reflect on her life, her God, but also to better discover her purpose. And so over the years, you may have heard us talk about mission trips. This will be the 18th year that we've gone to Ecuador. And so now other opportunities are opening up. And you might be saying, and you may have said in years past, one day I'm going to do that. One day I'm going to be a part of that missions trip. So today is your one day. Today is your one day. Don't wait. Life can turn in a moment. Today you're waking up, but tomorrow when you wake up, it may look very different. And you need to live your life with no regret, to live your life making every opportunity to come alive. And so the first way that you come alive, the very first way that you come alive is learn how to wake up to God. Now, not the same as like God's on the alarm clock saying, wake up, like I have my Another One Bites the Dust. It's not that. It's waking up to the things of God so that you can recognize Him. You can have an aptitude to hear Him speaking when He speaks to you. Do any of you guys sleepwalk? Anybody sleepwalk? Or maybe you have somebody in your family that sleep talks. Yeah? Well, I don't know if I do or if I don't. Sometimes Scott's told me that I said things and didn't say things as far as what they, do. But sometimes a person's sleep can be just very restless and they start sleep talking. I mean, just based on how busy they are, how busy their minds are, and the thing is that, and I will say with Scott, sometimes he has talked in his sleep, and I've been like, wonder what he's saying, So then, and I don't sleep very well at all. I'm a very light sleeper. So I can go to bed first, and as soon as he just turns the doorknob, I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Just a little click, no matter how, but he is a really deep sleeper. And so, of course, if he's going to talk in his sleep, I'm going to record him, And I've done that so many times. I'm not going to show you any of those. I mean, I know you would want to, but I'm not going to show you any of those. And so, but you can imagine, and I'll say to him that, you know what, you were really talking in your sleep last night. Oh, no, I wasn't. But then midday he gets this video, he's working on something and he just opens it up and there he is talking in his sleep, But the thing about it is that if you are sleep talking or you're sleepwalking, you might be conscious as far as the fact that you're able to talk and you're able to move. But you are totally disconnected from the reality of what's happening. You cannot remember even what's going on. And so it's the same with spiritual sleepwalking or spiritual sleep talking, is that you may be a follower of Jesus, but you have just totally allowed yourself to get into that lull moment. And then you go back to old habits and things like that. And it doesn't mean that you don't love Jesus. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that you don't love Jesus, just the fact that you've not awakened to Him. It's just the fact that you're asleep spiritually. There's a guy that wrote a book, and one of the ways I think that we wake up to God that's so important is to be intentional about what we think. Our minds are the birthplace of such positivity, but can also be the birthplace of such negativity. And so you have to learn how to control what happens here. And a lot of you might say, but my mind and my anxiety and my frustrations and all of those things just go in a loop. Well, they do go in a loop, and they're called mind loops. There's a guy that wrote a book. His name is Jim Hargrave, and he wrote a book called Mind Hacking. Mind hacking. The whole premise of this book is that he's saying that we create these loops in our brain, and we can create negative loops in our brain. And the truth is, the things that I'm thinking today are probably things that I thought yesterday, and then they just keep going on and on. And then those negative loops can actually become self-fulfilling prophecies because you just go do it. It's like if it's in your mind all the time, and then it's like you just start doing it. I mean, it's just insanity. Okay, like here's some negative loops. I'm never going to be in shape. So you're saying to yourself, I'm never going to be in shape. I'm never going to meet my boss's expectations. And your mind just goes through that. I'm always going to be too awkward to fall in love, to have a relationship. And so this book teaches you how to replace that old loop with a new loop. For instance, my old loop, I'm never going to be in shape. The new loop was, I want to exercise and I want to take care of myself. Old loop, I'm never going to meet my boss's expectation. The new loop is like, I am good at my job and I offer value. Those two areas of thinking are going to send you in totally different ways. And so you have to learn how to control those loops in your mind. And so you have to be intentional about changing the loop. Does that all have sense with people? Okay, you have to be intentional. Here's some of the loops about global outreach that I've heard over the years. I'm not going to laugh at you. I'm going to try not to. That sometimes it makes me laugh. I'm not funny. If you laugh at me today, it will be by accident, I promise. I'm not going to tell you a joke. But sometimes people laugh at me just because it's ridiculous. But here are some things that I've heard about global outreach. I cannot do that. I'm never going to be able to keep up with those people. So that's an old loop. A new loop, I'm not sure what I can do, but I'm going to do my best, and I am determined to go on this adventure. An old loop regarding global outreach, I do not speak Spanish. I am not going to be able to communicate with those people. A new loop, I don't speak a foreign language, but I can hug. I can hold someone's hand. I can show up, and I can pray. An old loop regarding global outreach, I've never flown, and I am scared. A new loop, I've never flown, and I am scared. No. See, that was a joke. I am ready for this flying adventure. And so that's what you kind of have to tell yourself. An old loop, I cannot afford this. It is all of that money. I cannot even try. The new loop says, I don't have that money on hand, but I am trusting. If I believe God wants me to go, he's going to provide. And so again, like I said, studies show us that when we allow our minds to go in these places, you make the choice what your loop's going to be. There's all kinds of things that inundate our mind and our thoughts, but we have the ability. We can't stop that negative thought from coming, but we can tell it where to go. So if we focus our hearts and minds on Jesus and the Bible to shape our thought loops, can you imagine how much more positive our life is going to be during the day? And so Ephesians 2:10, I don't have this on the slide, but I want you to listen to it. God planned for us to do good things. Say that to the person beside you, good things. God has planned for us to do good things and to live as he has wanted us to live. So it's so simple. Paul's still talking to those people in Ephesians, and I imagine he was frustrated. He's like, people, God has planned for us to do good things. He has a plan in place and for us to live as he wanted us to live. And that's why he sent Christ to us, because we were never going to be able to do it on our own. We were never going to be able to figure it out on our own. So he sent Jesus to us to make us who we are. Not that we are Jesus at Forest Park Church, but I will tell you that we take that admonition very seriously, is that God has planned for us to do good things with this local church. And so he has sent Jesus to show us what to do. Well, we absolutely believe global outreach has to be a part of what it is that we are supposed to do. And so the Apostle Paul gave us a master loop for our lives in that, a master loop. We are God's masterpiece, and he has made us new. And so those are the things that we want to understand and say, is that I am God's masterpiece created to do good things. So when you start feeling those worthless type feelings, that needs to be your new loop. I am God's masterpiece, and I am created to do good things. I would go on to say, I am God's masterpiece, and I am created to do hard things. I am God's masterpiece, and I am created to do unique things. Don't allow anybody else to tell you what is the thing God wants you to do. That is very personal and very individual. And so I just want to say to you that no matter what you're feeling today, you are not a failure. You are not finished. It is not over. God is not done with you. No matter what happened last night, he has not checked out on you. No matter what happened at work this week, he has not walked away from you. No matter what happened with your family last night at dinner, or if you've not seen your family, that God is not finished, because that needs to be your new loop. I am God's masterpiece created to do good things. We have to take control of our thought life. We have to replace that thought life with the things that God is giving us, the things he wants us to do good. We must come alive to the masterpiece that God says we are and what he's creating in our lives. So the second way we come alive is number 2, this. Be careful the kinds of things we expose our hearts and lives and our minds. Wake up to the kinds of things we expose to our hearts and minds. So basically, what goes in comes out. Do you agree with that? What goes in comes out. So let's read this passage from Luke. So again, we're going to Luke chapter 6, verse 45. So again, Luke is another, one of the disciples. And so when I like to read people who I think are authorities on things. So it's like if someone teaches me how to do this, this, and this, I don't want to, if they're just like giving an opinion, this is what I think you should do, they're going to have a lot more credibility if I know they've already done it. And so Luke was there with Jesus, and he understood what this meant. He says, good people do good things because of the good in their hearts. Bad people do bad things because of the evil in their hearts. Your words show what is in your heart. That is absolutely the truth. Your words, what comes out, shows what is deep inside. The priorities that you place on everything in your life shows what is deep inside. We encounter people all of the time. We encounter good people. There are a lot of great people in this world. They build you with their words. They encourage you. But we also encounter some bad people. They are in the pit all the time. They just feel bad, and they want everybody else to feel bad too. And they just seem evil. Don't they seem evil? Like you've been, around those folks that it just seems as if the sky is always falling. Now, I've learned enough to know that there's a lot of circumstances that build into the fact, but they're still hard to be around, aren't they? They really are. And so some of you may be that person. Not that you're, evil, but every thought that comes into your brain is a negative thought. It is a negative loop. But you really want to change the way that you're thinking and the way that you're speaking and the way that people feel about you because you're absolutely miserable. How do you change what you're saying? You have to change what you're thinking. You cannot change what's happening inside of you and what's coming out unless you change the way you think. And so it's really important to also be aware is that, and I'd love for you to think about that, you have to change what you're saying to your kids and to be careful what you're saying to them. Because the truth is, all of us as adults are products of the childhood and the people that were sending messages to us. Absolutely. And so if you are a parent, you're a coach, you're a student leader here at Forest Park, you're one of our Kid Venture volunteers, your voice is very loud in the hearts and minds of kids. And so it's just important to own. I always, say with our staff a lot of times when we're trying to make changes and maybe this didn't work and that didn't work, we have to be first to take blame. We have to be first to say, hey, I made that happen, or I really made that really bad. It's okay to say that worked well, but we also have to be able to say when that doesn't work well. So we have to own it. Well, if you have influence in a child's life today, you have to own that responsibility. Children deserve to be treated like the masterpiece that they are. Not a trash can for our negative thoughts, because sometimes that's what we do, is we spill our negative thoughts into our children because we're really too lazy or undisciplined to improve the way we think. And so they then have to deal with all the ramifications of our negative thoughts. They don't deserve that. That's a whole different message. The way you improve what comes out of you is to control what goes in you, for sure. Some of the things, and this isn't the police, but what you watch on TV, the content, the music that you listen to, the things that people say to you is revealed in what you say, the goals. And so you want to be more positive, kind, life-giving with your words, and you want to speak to your family with positivity, and you want everyone around you to look at you as one of those good people and not of those bad people. You want to come alive to the things of God. Keep exposing your mind and hearts to the things of God. You'll be more conscious of the things that God is doing in your life. Okay, the third way we come alive is to wake up to opportunity. Wake up to opportunity. Any procrastinators in the room? Raise your hand and be free. Procrastinators in the room. Procrastinators, I don't think necessarily that they're lazy. I always look with procrastinators, I think, you have got to be very talented to figure out how to do everything except for what I've asked you to do. It's amazing. You can accomplish so many things, but none of the stuff I've asked you to do. So that happens a lot of times, is that procrastinators are procrastinating what needs to be done for whatever reason, but they surely aren't unproductive. They are very productive people. They're good at getting things that are done. Sometimes they just don't matter what they're doing. And so you might have sat through services year after year. Like I said, you're like, next year I'm going to be on that plane. And so you procrastinate what's going on inside of you, that feeling that you need to go, you squelch it immediately by saying, next year I'm going to do that. So you immediately procrastinate that feeling that is saying that you need to do it. You just shelve it to the next year. And then for some of you guys, this is like the third or fourth time you have procrastinated that feeling. Some of you have been doing it for 10 years. You just like procrastinate and say, next year, I know they're going to go. So next year, and then you just don't think about it right now. You have fallen asleep. Because I'm going to tell you, there is no way that God would procrastinate this experience in your life. And you might look at that and say, how do you know what God wants for me? Well, the Bible very clearly says, go and do this, so I don't really have to consult it. You know, it's just a matter of planning for it so that you can go. I always tell folks, if you've got young children and you've got nobody to take care of your kids, you can't go to Ecuador because your children need you. But if you plan and you prepare and you make sure that you feel good about it, they feel good about it, you have prepared a situation that allows you to be able to go. And so last week, Scott said this in his message. Which was so great, and so applies to what we're saying now. Our past is the greatest predictor of our future. And when we were in our small group Friday night, I was asking him. A lot of times I pushed back on what he's saying. You know, I'm sure that's so shocking. You know, and I was like, but do you have people that say to you, where is the ability to ever just not do this? You know, like is it ever going to be that my past is not the prediction of my future? In other words, the mistakes that I've made in my past are going to come forward in my future and things like that. And the truth is that we can learn new ways of thinking. We can have new loops. But when we procrastinate, we're probably going to procrastinate again until we come alive. So if we keep doing the same things over and over again, we're going to have the same outcome. If you have procrastinated this experience year after year after year, you're going to procrastinate it again unless you come alive and make a choice. Okay, so we procrastinate the opportunity, the global outreach experience. But that's not just the only thing you're procrastinating. I have made some of my very best friends in global outreach. I have connected with people all over the world that have greatly enhanced my relationship with Jesus and my relationship with my family. If I had procrastinated when I felt that opportunity, then I would have procrastinated new friendships. I would have procrastinated new experiences. I would have procrastinated bucket list moments that have absolutely altered my life. So let's read this passage from Ephesians again. And again, remember, Paul is saying this to sleeping people. Ephesians 5:15 through 17. He says this, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Make the most of every opportunity. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. It is so clear that there is a pathway, that there is a stream of consciousness that we can get into and be a part of the things that God wants us to be about. A lot of people, like I said, have bucket lists. Okay, bucket list, things that you want to do, you know, proverbially before you pass away. But, you know, I don't like to look at it that way because it's just negative. I don't want to think about that. But things that you really want to accomplish for your life. So raise your hand if you've got a bucket list and you keep checking it off every time something happens. Okay, good. Because those things you want to accomplish, you're checking them off that they're done. And so I'm not surprised because that's the way a lot of us are wired. We're wired to accomplish things. And so over the years, you know, if you lead a mission trip for 18 years, you have to kind of think about different ways to reinvent and ways to get people on board. And I started thinking about that. I want people to look at this experience as a bucket list moment. I want them to, you know, a lot of churches don't put as much focus on global outreach as we do. And so I thought if we could get them to look at it as a bucket list moment and not take it for granted. Like, you know, one year Scott and I could just get up here and say, you know, we're not doing that anymore. We've just decided we're going to do something differently. And then there's not all of that planning and effort that goes into a global outreach experience. Well, you may have missed that opportunity. Not that we're doing that, but that might be something that happens. And I don't want you to miss that. And so being a part of this experience is like a bucket list moment. When we were in Uganda this last November with, again, you saw Jan, Amber, who serves on our team, Allison serves on the team, Lauren Chandler, and Kim Polini, they were all with us. And we were getting ready to climb on the Jeep, so to go to the safari to see all, those amazing animals. And so we were all climbing on the Jeep, and we were getting our seats. And as we were getting ready to leave, Kim was sitting right behind me, and she says, "This is a bucket list moment." And in my mind, I thought, yes, it worked. So that was checking it off my list. Yes, it worked. And so I've been kind of thinking about how amazing it is that we are giving people the opportunity to have those bucket list moments, to be a part of something so incredible as global outreach, while helping them accomplish those bucket list moments at Forest Park Church. And so this is a picture of Kim. And again, I asked her about what were one of those moments and why other people should be a part of it. And this is what Kim said: "You will never really know how blessed your life is here until you see how the rest of the world lives." And I have heard people say that over and over again. You have this concept of what it looks like to live in a third world country, but you don't really know the contrast until you're able to go. Another person on our team was Lauren Chandler. And so this is Lauren. And when I asked her, she said, "It is important for people to go on these trips to see a world different from where you live." Very similar to what Kim was saying. You also never know how your life will impact theirs when your heart is open to go. Again, you have to be willing to come alive, because it's not easy. This trip is not easy. Certainly going to Africa is not easy. But bucket list moments like global outreach are good things, as that scripture in Ephesians says. And so I don't want you to miss an opportunity to be a part of something that will radically change your life and radically change the life of your family. And you might be saying it's impossible for you to travel. It's impossible for you to get on a plane and do things like these girls, have done. But it might be impossible for you to travel, but you could certainly assist someone else with going. The Watoto Children's Choir was here in December, and I'm sure a lot of you were able to come to that concert on a Wednesday night. It was awesome. Aren't they amazing? I'm sure you loved it. I just absolutely love them. And so I've been so honored to have been asked to be a part of the educational leadership of the Watoto Child Care Ministry group. They have me as an education ambassador here in the United States. And so that in and of itself is a miracle. But it requires me to go to Uganda now every summer, every June, and lead an educational summit for 500 teachers, 500 staff. And so we provide specialized to those teachers so that they can educate the children just like you saw that were here. Then last year when we were in Rwanda, another African country, we had an opportunity came for us to walk basically into a meeting that's the equivalent of the county commissioners, is the best way I could describe it, in one of the local communities. And because of the fact that I was able to give them $500, so it was a $500 gift that was able to then provide medication for, 100, I think the documentation they got out, like 147 people. Like their medicine was only $5 a year. And so we were able to help them with that. But the thing is that a person gave me that money for that opportunity who doesn't even go to church here. She follows me on social media platforms, and she wanted to invest. But because of the fact that she made the decision to give me that $500 so I could give it to those people, that then made that school system there realize that they were priority. And then they gave me the opportunity to go into their schools and are actually open. And this is a very socialist country, but very open to us presenting the gospel this October, all because of the obedience of that one person. As all of these doors that have been opening, Scott said this morning in our huddle, doors have been presented and we have walked through them. We've tried to for Ecuador, Rwanda, and Uganda. And so for now, my actual yearly budget is about $8,000, for me to be able to do these trips. And I used to be really concerned about putting it out there, letting people know, but I am not anymore, because I know in order for me to be able to do what it is that God has called me to do, I need to not keep another person from being able to be part of that who might not be able to jump on the plane. So you might be thinking that no one's going to help me, I'm not going to be able to do it, and you're still tired of moving through this life numb, but you want to jump on board. I want to share you another story from Global Outreach, Maggie and Petey Blinn. And so you'll see this picture here of our Rwanda team from last year. which is the next slide that is going to come up. And then Maggie and Petey are there on the left. And listen to her words as she described what Global Outreach has meant for her and Petey. So she says, for me, Global Outreach changed the trajectory of the life of my family. So basically, the way I looked, they were going this way. They had the opportunity to jump on one of these trips, and it sent them in a different direction. It allowed us for 1 week to focus solely on helping and serving others with no distractions for 1 week, no interruptions, just us doing what God had put in our hearts to do. See how all the scriptures align to what we've shared. All those things align to this one point. That week forever changed us. So much bitterness, anger, resentment, and lack of faith was washed away and replaced by trust in God. So those negative loops in their minds of bitterness, of anger, of frustration, that just happen when you live life. They just do. They opened their minds to a new loop that was then replaced by trust. He showed us how people who live in absolute poverty have faith that literally moves mountains. We know our true calling is loving, serving, and helping the broken, the hurt, and the lost around the world. And so you'll see that this was the Sunday before we left, with Allison, Kim, Clavette, myself, Maggie, and Petey. And we had an amazing experience as it being our first trip. And what I told those guys, I said, there'll never be another first team to Rwanda. It was not easy. It was challenging in a lot of ways, but I would never want to do it. I would never not want to do it because of the challenges. Maggie and Petey came alive on their very first outreach trip to Ecuador. That's when those loops were replaced. And we're so excited because this summer, their daughter, Shelby, is old enough to be able to go. She's been trying to get me to change the age requirement for years, because they have to be rising ninth graders. And everything that she could figure out, to get it to a little bit younger. But because of what happened in the life of her parents all those years ago, it placed such a beautiful desire for her to be able to go. And so what I want to show you, this last video, is from October in Uganda. Watoto Neighborhood is a program that reaches the most vulnerable women in Kampala. And so you saw all of the kids that came from Watoto Child Care Ministries. They sang on, but those are kids that are in the orphanage. What I'm talking about now are women that the church has reached through the ministries of Watoto Church within the city of Kampala. And these ladies have been abandoned. They've been abandoned by their spouses. Sometimes they're widows. Their husband has died. And in that culture, when your husband dies, you are then rejected. You're rejected by your family. You're rejected by his family, but you're also rejected by your own family. And so those are things, we just don't understand, and a lot of things have been changed. But these are women who have just been totally left by everybody. And so they have nothing. So a lot of times these are women who have prostituted themselves to be able to feed their children. But what Watoto does is it starts this process. How many of you bought jewelry when the kids were here? You bought some of that stuff that was made, jewelry, purses. These are the women that make that stuff. So what they do is it's about a 1.5-year program. They bring them in, they disciple them for 6 months, and then they give them a tradecraft, which is like making the jewelry, making the purses and things like that. And they do that for another 6 months, and then they actually give them their tools so that they can go start their own business. So it is really starting a aspect, a 2-year process of life change. The women that we're going to show you in this video are the ones that are in that first initial phase. These are women that they've just basically pulled off the streets. 200 ladies, and what they wanted me to do was kind of talk to them about parenting. And I'm like, okay, well, if I've got all my stuff together, I got my PowerPoint, I've got my projector, I've got my PowerPoint presentation handouts for them. We've got it all together, and I get ready to start passing it. And just before I started doing all that, they had all filed in and sat in the church, and I just had this sense, and I asked the leader, I said, are these women literate? Are they going to be able to read this? And she said, actually, about 75% of them do not know how to read. And so I was like, flip those away. So I threw those out. And so then I pulled out like a whiteboard and, drew pictures. But the thing is, I knew I could teach them sign language. You know, I knew that I could teach them some English and some empowerment, you know, so that I would be, because a lot of times what happens is they feel like that we're so up here and they're so down here. So I wanted it to be like an equal place. And so we just taught them a really simple sign language song, but they absolutely loved it. And so I'm so glad that Amber, Allison, whoever captured this on video was able to capture it. And what's so amazing, I will definitely tell you that this was one of my bucket list moments. And so this is that video. I don't know if you can see, but the smiles on their faces just were so huge for them to be able to do that was such an honor. And so you might be saying to yourself, okay, all right, you've said all this stuff, you've kind of made me feel a little bit bad about myself, am I procrastinating? And, you know, I talk to my kids like I'm jacked up, and now they're going to be jacked up. And so you're thinking, just let all of that change your loop, change your loop. Okay, so let's replace that negative loop with a positive loop. Is that there is an opportunity that is presented to you right now by your local church, people that you know, trust, and love, we hope, and you can be a part of something that will cause you to come alive. And so I've said this so many times, that if you have any desire to be a part of this trip, you have got to be a part of this trip, because you need to be on that plane. So the things that you need to do next is very simple, 2 things. The first thing you need to do is come to tonight's interest meeting. In this room tonight at 6 o'clock, we're going to have a meeting with Ecuador, anybody interested in going to Ecuador, Uganda, or Rwanda. We're just going to sit right here and we're just going to talk. I'm going to pass out some information to you and try to answer your questions so that you can determine if you want to go. By showing up at the meeting, you're not like signing away that you're going to do it. We're not going to order you a plane ticket or anything, okay? You're coming to see if this opportunity is for you. And then secondly, if you believe that this is your opportunity and you want to go, you get ready to prepare for your deposit that will be due with your application, just $250 by mid-February. Then we're going to order you a plane ticket, okay? And that means that you're ready to go. Last thing I want to say about opportunity. Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist, I'm sure if you've grown up in church, you might not have known they were cousins, but they are cousins. John the Baptist, he, on a beautiful summer day, was baptizing people in the Jordan River. Okay, and Jesus had heard about him baptizing people in the Jordan River, and basically what John was doing, you know, the Bible says he was preparing the way for Jesus, you know, in the King James. But basically what he was doing was kind of setting the stage for his cousin, which was the real rock star, to show up. And so he was setting the stage and he was baptizing people, you know, in the Jordan River. You know, Jesus wakes up one day, whatever Jesus thinks when he wakes up one day, and he decides today is the day that I'm going to be baptized. Now, he's Jesus. He can pretty much do what he wants to do when he wants to do. But he chose to walk from where he was 60 miles to the Jordan River. 60 miles he put in that work so that his cousin, John the Baptist, could baptize him. He believed in the opportunity and he took advantage when it was presented. Today, this is the opportunity, and I hope you will take advantage to come alive. And I want to close with this last scripture, back from Ephesians 5:14. Light shows up everything, just as the scriptures say. Wake up from your sleep. So if you're asleep today, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. This could be just the thing that you're going to do it, and then Christ will shine in you. Take advantage of this opportunity. We love you. We want you to be a part of it. And again, I hope that I'll see you tonight at 6 o'clock for our meeting. But just before we leave, I want you to see this video of some beautiful moments that have been put together from our global outreach trips last year.